the best things in life are birds, and this is one of the best birds in life at the moment. This is a female osprey on the south coast of England on a nesting platform, eagerly awaiting the arrival of a male. This is part of the Paul Ospreys project. They've been reintroduced. Roy Dennis, Tim Mackrell, Paul Morton have all been working very hard down on the Poole Harbour area to get these birds back. They've been releasing them. Birds have been flying down in the winter to Senegal and Gambia and returning. This bird is actually a Rutland bird. It's come from another introduction project further north in Rutland, where the ospreys have been breeding. But there's been no breeding on the south coast of England for 200 years. So everything is crossed in the ornithological community, hoping that the male will turn up and pair up again, as they did last year with this female, and the breeding process can start. I mean, I don't want to be...
They were too young last year. They were too young,
They were too
so
young.
this year they're more mature and could possibly be a successful mating.
It could
Maybe.
be. Well, the
If
only
he turns
thing
up.
is, and I don't want to be a prophet of doom here because I'm, desperate for this to be successful, but typically the males turn up first, not the females.
Chris, don't
Where
doom
is
and
that
gloom
male?
it.
He's doing things with other females in other places. I don't know. No one knows where he is. Unfortunately, the birds are not satellite tracked. We don't know where that male is. But we sincerely hope that he's just loitering in northern France somewhere, enjoying a fish supper and fish breakfast, and then he'll come over and meet up with this female. And she's going through all the processes of nest building, and it's brilliant to watch. For those of people watching this, you can find it obviously at Birds of Poole Harbour Osprey.
Yeah, on their YouTube channel.
And it's live. Yeah, you can watch it.
It's fantastic. Now, I still think he's making a dramatic entrance. I think he knows the support is building for him. He's just hanging around in to swan on in and get all the praise and support. I think
might be in the
I'm a bit more
sunshine
optimistic.
down in Senegal,
Maybe
feasting all those shallow, salty lagoons, which is such an amazing place to see ospreys. Anyway, fingers crossed. Keep your eyes on that, because whether that male turns up or not, other ospreys will obviously turn up to one another. And if she's got a permanent place on that platform, there will be osprey interaction at some point.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, from one bird onto another fantastic bird from Sound Approach UK. Every day they're posting birdsong on Twitter. Have a look at this. I love it.
See, I'd have said, if you'd have tested me with that, I would never have got it right. I would have. No, I don't think so. I would have said egret.
Would you? Well, it sounds like a wading bird, doesn't it? It sounds like it's water supply.
Oh, you can hear water there.
You can hear the water, so that's it. You would have said egret.
I'd have gone for egret.
No, it's the Eurasian spoonbill. I love spoonies. They are so gorgeous. They've got that very distinctive long bill with that scoop at the end.
Spatulate
bill at the end. Exactly. Fantastic animals. They like both. They can be seen in fresh and salty water, but they much prefer freshwater habitats. So they open their bill slightly and they swish it from side to side. And when they get something like an insect, a crustacean, or a small fish in there, they snap it up. But you know my favourite thing about spoonbills, and I know you know what I'm going to say.
I know what you're going to say.
Because I always go on, but whenever anyone mentions spoonbill, this is what I say. Anyone know what a baby spoonbill is called? A teaspoon. How cute is that? A little teaspoon.
Listen, where were we when we went? They were breeding somewhere.
Yeah.
And someone told you that, and I never know whether they were pulling your leg.
I don't know, but I mean, even if it might not be a scientific term for them, but I love it. A teaspoon.
Coincidentally, Poole Harbour is a great place to see spoonbills in the UK. On Brownsea Island, the numbers there built into. I don't think to get down there. Must be at least 30, 40, maybe more. And there are some of the birds which are coming over from the Netherlands. And some birds which are now resident there. So Poole Harbour, when things get back to the new normal, do take a visit to Brownsea Island. It's a great place to see spoonbills. And look, we go do the quiz. Now, Phil Barnett has sent us these reduced geometric abstract pictures of UK wildlife, plants, fungi and birds. We started off with a couple of easy ones, goldfinch and tortoiseshell. Everyone got them. Yesterday we went for bee orchid. No, I don't think too many people got it before we said it was a plant.
Yeah.
But here is perhaps an even trickier one because there's hardly anything there. Phil has reduced the organism. I nearly said what it was. Phil has reduced the organism to just this: a bar of beige, a semicircle of white, then a little bit of off-white beneath it.
What could it be?
Think you know what that is? Send us in your answer. We'll reveal all at the end of the programme. And we've got an even more difficult one to wrap up tomorrow, I've got to tell you.
I love that you just call this programme now. It's like it's gone from show to programme.
Oh, no, broadcast.
Our little live stream.
Our modest broadcast, yes. Now, Beast, you're exercising today, aren't you? Aren't you running 5 kilometres or something?
I'm going to try to. Well, it's this whole thing. You run 5, you nominate 5 to run 5k, and then you donate £5 to the NHS.
Can I say it instantly? Forget my email address. Do not nominate me.
Why?
Because
you're going to be the first
the
person.
likelihood of me running 5 kilometres is even less than the likelihood of you running 5 kilometres.
Well, it's, the respiratory system is a difficult thing. But do you know who has a great respiratory system?
Oh, go on.
Birds do. So take a look at this. This is the anatomical respiratory system of birds. It's very different from our own. For ourselves, we have some barking poodles. And we have, of course, lungs, and we breathe in. And we take in that oxygen, it diffuses in our lungs, and it comes out. But this, the air that we breathe in is often contaminated by the air that we're breathing out. So it's not as concentrated and as fresh as it could be. But birds have a really interesting way of rounding this off and adapting around it. So this is the structure here. There are 4 main phases. So each breath goes through 2 respiratory cycles. It comes down the trachea here, and then what it does, it goes into, we have the anterior air sacs right here. So birds have air sacs. They aren't for diffusing gas exchange, so you won't be taking in oxygen there or releasing CO2. What they are is for just holding on to the air before it can go into the lungs. So they go into the anterior air sacs, and then on another inhalation breath, so more air will be coming down the trachea, the breath in the anterior air sac will then go into the lungs where gas exchange takes place. There's about 1,800 small bronchi in there, and that is where there's lots of air capillaries that are intertwined with blood capillaries that help this O2 exchange. So from that point, the bird then exhales, and on that exhale, the air then moves up here to the to the posterior air sac. No, I've got that the wrong way around. Sorry about that. So it goes to the anterior air sacs after the posterior, and then from that point it's inhaled again and it goes out through the trachea. So there's a constant new airflow into the lungs, and this maximizes the amount of oxygen that can be absorbed, which is really important because you imagine these birds, they fly to very high altitudes. Therefore, they need to have really good supply of oxygen all of the time. And that's how they get around this, is by having these air sacs. Various different species have different numbers of air sacs. So it can be anything from 9 to 11 air sacs in different bird species, which is really cool.
So essentially, they're breathing fresh air as they breathe in and as they breathe out.
In and out. So there's a constant stream of fresh air that goes into their lungs, because everywhere else they've got these air sacs which hold in the air, the anterior and posterior air sacs. But they've also got different types of air sacs. They've got some of it, in fact, goes into their wing bones as well. So it's quite interesting. They've got tiny little air sacs all over the place, which is fascinating.
Amazing. And do you know, some of the birds are very high flying. And of course, if you're at high altitude, there's not as much oxygen in the atmosphere. We know that bar-headed geese fly over the Himalayas. So we were talking, at heights over. We'll go to feet, actually, just keep it old school here. So they're flying at over 20,000 feet. But the highest flying bird ever recorded was a Rappel's griffon vulture, which was sucked into a jet air engine over Sierra Leone in West Africa. And we know it was a Rappel's griffon because the feathers were recovered and analysed by a remarkable scientist in America. And that bird was flying at 30,000 feet. And these vultures, which fly very, very high, have a different form of hemoglobin, the chemical in the blood corpuscles which transfers oxygen around the body. Amazing. And we also think that dinosaurs had air sacs too, although there's a debate about it. They're arguing about it.
I believe there is 3 different theories, but one that is it respiratory? Is it for to help kind of the centre of gravity is another one? But the most obvious one we do think is for increased respiratory flow. So
and cooling maybe, because they were massive animals. The ones that had them, we think of the sauropods, things like the Pachysaurus, formerly known as Brontosaurus. And this was a really huge, bulky animal. We know that, huge bulky animals have trouble with heat exchange, elephants, big ears, etc. So it could have been that they were using them also for heat exchange.
It's incredibly difficult to tell. I mean, the walls of these air sacs are often only 2 cells thick. So, of course, that isn't going to be fossilised. And that's going to be really difficult to see the evidence of that. We do believe that they did have them. There's strong evidence to say that there are. But in terms of why, we're unsure.
I'll tell you what, it was a fascinating explanation, Ned, but it hasn't increased the chances of you actually running 5 kilometres today.
Do you know what? You really don't have much belief in me.
No, right, okay, I'm going to be there. I'll be there with the whistle, the flag, and also I'll be checking the distance rigorously.
You're so rude.
Right.
You're nominated tomorrow, so you know. Yeah. So coming up next, we have an amazing VT from Rebecca. Rebecca has her own butterfly farm in her garden, which her dad built for her. It's painted bright pink. It's a fabulous thing, and she's so passionate. So take a look at this.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca and I love butterflies. And I especially like this time of year because all the butterflies are starting to emerge. So far this year we've seen the peacock, small tortoiseshell, comma and brimstone. And next to my butterfly farm there's some ivy which is for the holly blues to lay eggs on. The past 2 years we've had a holly blue lay eggs on the ivy so that I could look after them in my butterfly farm. I love butterflies that much, I want to protect them from predators. Come inside, I'll show you some holly blue chrysalises. Here is a holly blue chrysalis. It's tiny and brown. And it's on an ivy leaf too. Here are all my magnifying glasses and my book catching stuff. First, the holly blue caterpillar is green and then it turns to purple. And also I've looked after peacocks, my favourite butterfly. They're super colourful, and did you know that they have eye marks to scare away predators? And when it's really scared, it hisses like a snake and it flashes its colours out like this. Come on, let's see what food plants we can find. Here are some thistles for the painted lady to lay eggs on. Here are some nettles that the peacock, small tortoiseshell, red admiral and common lay eggs on. Not many people like nettles because they sting, but you could put some in a pot like we did, or at the back of a flower bed. Here is some garlic mustard for the orange tip. Orange tips usually lay eggs around the flower. Here is some verbena. This is a nectarine plant and eventually it will grow really tall and little flowers at the end, bunched up like a pom-pom. Next, here is a buddleia. We call it the butterfly bush because usually when it flowers, lots of butterflies and bees come in nectar on it in summer and spring. Here is a rhizomum. This is a nectarine plant too, and they love a rhizomum. I wonder what eggs will be laid in my garden this year. That's it for now, bye!
So passionate, so young, so keen, and also lots of good information. She really puts out the information, and you can follow her on Twitter at Rebecca's Butterfly Farm. She's constantly posting about the things that she has in her little converted shed there, her little pink shed. Great pictures of the pupae, sometimes the caterpillar, and obviously great enjoyment for the adults. So try and follow Becca on Rebecca's Butterfly Farm. Now, yesterday I showed you the periodic table of British bats, which I'd drawn
Love this.
1 o'clock in the morning or something at one point. And I also did one for butterflies. Here it is here. I think it might need some modification actually, but yeah, this is a sort of thread. And do you know why I decided to do these? This is going to sound really banal, but I thought I'd do some tea towels, because people kept sending me tea towels with a natural history theme, and they had sort of pictures on and stuff, but they didn't have any information. And I so love information that I thought, wouldn't it be good if I did a periodic table of butterflies, dragonflies, all sorts of things, bats that I've done. And I could do tea towels so that when Megan was washing up, if Megan was ever washing up, you could be looking at the periodic table of British butterflies and learning a little bit more about them. And let's move on before an argument starts. Our guest this morning is one and only Kate Bradbury. Kate has appeared on Spoonwatch, and she's renowned for her wildlife gardening skills, for her gardening skills per se. But also, I have to point out, she is a great author. She wrote this book, The Bumblebee Flies Away, a little while ago, maybe last year, a year before, I lose track of time. It's one of the best books I've read in recent years. And I'm not just saying that because Kate is our guest. It's an extraordinary book. It's about wildlife gardening. It's about connecting with nature. It's about using that as a means to move through a difficult period in life. And I'm just going to read you a couple of things that people have written on the back here. So Melissa Harrison, who's another wildlife-themed author, said, a truly inspiring account of transformation made me simultaneously want to read the final page and rush out into my garden. And then Dave Goulson, who was a guest on our programme earlier in the week, Professor Dave Goulson from Sussex University, renowned for his interest in bumblebees, said, quirky, passionate and endearing, an inspiring account of bringing a tiny garden back to life. So, Kate, your mission today is to tell us how we can all bring our tiny gardens back to life.
Oh, thank you, Chris. That's lovely. Right, I thought we're all at home. So I thought 5 things we could do for wildlife in our gardens right now. So number 1, we are all, I think most councils across the country have stopped doing green bin collections, haven't they? So what we can do with that green waste instead is to make habitat piles. I think there's some pictures of my habitat piles coming up now. But all you need to do is just pile these things. I mean, do you remember when compost heaps just used to be a heap in the corner of the garden, and it was just just at the back there, just sort of hidden away, and that was so good for wildlife because you could get hedgehogs in there, you could get slow worms, bumblebees, little mice and voles, and then birds would pick through the heaps to eat all the insects and the beetles and things that were sort of there. And now what we tend to do is we tend to put our garden waste in compost heaps or compost bins, or put them in the green bin and get the council to pick them up. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity for us to bring back the compost heap in the corner of the garden, because it's so good for wildlife. And I've got a few in the back. I've got log piles as well, which is really good. I've got a south facing log pile and a north facing log pile. You get different species on the different piles, and I've even got a little front garden compost heap which has got a bumblebee nesting in it. So they're well worth doing. They're really good fun. Second thing is dig a pond. So you may remember last year on Springwatch, I dug a pond as part of my transformation for the garden, and last week I got my first frog, so that was really lovely. So don't worry, the wildlife does turn up eventually if it doesn't come straight away. The thing to do when you're digging ponds is focus really closely on the shallows. Just make sure there's loads of gentle sloping sides. So imagine you're a hedgehog. Can you walk in and walk out easily, or are you going to get stuck? If you're a bird, are there plenty of shallows where you can bathe, nice shallow water where you can flap about, and also tadpoles. You may have noticed tadpoles around the edge of a pond. They always congregate around the edge of the pond, and that's because the water's really shallow and it's warmer. It's just warmer for them. It's just nicer for them to hang out in the pond in the shallow, warmer areas. So focus really closely on the shallows. You can go down to about 60 centimetres deep if you want to, but you don't really need to. The main thing to focus on is the shallows, because that's where all the fun is. That's the best part of the garden. Third thing is make you can leave little slow worm slates. So ecologists make reptile tins, which tend to be corrugated iron, and they leave corrugated iron over long grass, and then they sort of look under it to see if there's any slow worms or grass snakes under there. You can do a similar thing in your garden if you've got corrugated iron. Go ahead and use that. I just use old pieces of slate. I've got an old roofing tile and another a sort of clay flooring tile, I think it is. And yeah, I checked under them yesterday and recorded it, and there wasn't anything there. But there sometimes is. We've got a little slow worm that hangs out there, which is a really lovely thing to do. Make a bee hotel. So now is the time, April, when red mason bees are coming out of their hibernation and they're nesting. So if you're really quick, you can make a bee hotel. I think you should be able to see one of my homemade bee hotels now on the screen. So just use bamboo canes, or you can buy red mason bee tubes online really easily. Make the box slightly deeper than the length of the tubes, and make sure they're hollow all the way down so that the bees can't nest in there. And that's a really lovely thing to do. And you'll get red mason bees in now, and you'll get leaf cutter bees in June, and they're lovely, lovely to see. And then the last thing, easiest thing to do, flowers for bees. If you plant them now, you can get plug plants quite cheaply. There's no point in spending loads of money on really big plants. Just get little plug plants, plant them in, and then by summer they'll be absolutely gorgeous. And you should be able to see a picture of my front garden last summer, which was full of flowers and full of bees.
Kate, oh, we muted. Let's have a look.
No, we're good.
Okay, Kate. At the moment, obviously, the people don't have access to garden centres where they typically might buy things. Are those things available online? And if not, I suppose if you can't buy plants online, you can buy seeds and you can start from basics, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, growing some seed is quite easy for most plants, but yet you can buy plants online. And in fact, lots of nurseries, lots of nurseries really, and lots of growers that were going to be supplying flower shows like the Chelsea Flower Show, Malvern, all of those big flower shows. They've actually got a lot of stock that needs shifting because they haven't got this outlay. They haven't got the flower shows to provide for. So actually, the more plants we buy online, the better, really. And we have heard things of garden centres and nurseries having to sort of compost all of their waste, but then some online suppliers are trying to absorb some of that. So yeah, do try online. There's loads of really good suppliers. In fact, if you just Googled bee-friendly plants, you would come up with some really lovely online suppliers there who could give you some nice plants grown in peat-free compost without any pesticides.
Before we go to some audience questions, one other thing. There was a preoccupation when it came to wildlife gardening with focusing solely on native species.
Yeah.
And that really kind of excluded the more traditional gardeners. But species from overseas can also provide a valuable resource, can't they?
Absolutely, especially for nectar and pollen. I mean, nectar and pollen is largely the same, sort of regardless of where it's from. So yes, and actually plants from further away can extend the season. So because of climate change, insects are coming out of hibernation earlier. They're not going into hibernation until much later. So by growing more plants from different parts of the world, we can extend that season of pollen and nectar, which is really important.
Yes, so there's lots of questions coming in for you, Kate, which
Yay!
is fantastic. So Vicky Jackson has a question for you. My wildlife garden has Spanish bluebells in it. I didn't plant them as the previous resident did 25 years ago, and they have spread wildly. Should I remove them? Yeah,
they will. If it was my garden, then I would, yes, because they can bees love them, but because bees love them, they create a lot of seeds and they hybridize with our native bluebell. So if you live near a colony of native bluebells, then potentially those Spanish bluebells could be hybridizing, or there's potential for those to hybridize with the native ones. They're an absolute nightmare to get out. You'll probably spend 5 years trying to get them out. But yeah, good luck.
To keep you busy.
Very busy, yeah. You've got time.
Yeah, lots of time at the moment. So another question from Beverly Carter. What trees and bushes would be best for a medium-sized garden? I have lots of space in my borders that I could plant up. I moved here in the summer of 2018 and haven't done anything with the garden yet. I want to plant things that are welcoming for our wildlife, but don't know where to start. Is there anything that isn't too big?
Okay, so I've got quite a small garden. You can see the end of my garden. So it's only about 40 foot long. Trees, I've got a rowan, which grows to about 15 metres, eventually over 20 years. I've got hawthorn, which is an amazing wildlife plant. And that grows, I think, to about 12 metres, maybe 10 metres tall. But again, over sort of a 20-30 year period, it doesn't go straight up. And I've got silver birch as well, which can grow quite tall, but it's quite thin, and it's got this really lovely canopy so that the light is filtered through it. It doesn't create dense shade, it only creates very dappled shade. So those are 3 trees. Shrubs, I mean, you could grow Guelder rose, which is a really great shrub, European spindle. Hazel doesn't grow too big either. I mean, these are all native trees and shrubs. I tend to grow native trees and shrubs and then a mixture of native and non-native flowering plants, just because native tree shrubs tend to attract more moths, which lay eggs, and then their caterpillars can be eaten by birds. Yeah, there's loads of stuff. You can grow cotoneaster, which produces lots of berries in autumn for birds. Anything that's got berries on it is amazing for wildlife. So yeah, I think that should give you a few things to work on.
A good start. So just another one. Claire Longhurst says, what about garden meadows? I'd really like one, but I hear they can take over the whole area. Is it possible just to create a section? Can you plant meadow type flowers in big pots? Thank you. I was thinking of getting a bee bomb.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few sort of elements to that question, aren't there? Can a meadow take over the lawn? Well, if you keep mowing certain bits of the lawn, then not really. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. You can grow meadow plants in a pot, and they look really nice. If you get a large pot with a 40 centimetre diameter, you can just sow some seeds on the top, and that looks really pretty. You can grow cornfield annuals like cornflowers and poppies, and they look really nice. I've got my whole lawn. I don't know if you can see a bit of it, which is meadow, which is sort of just growing up a bit now, which is really nice. What was the last thing? Oh, bee bombs. Yeah, bee bombs are good. Or you could just buy just individual seed packets of cornfield annuals. You could also get plug plants of proper British native wildflower meadows. So things like oxeye daisies and red clover and wild carrots and things like that. And you can actually plant those plugs into your lawn, and that gives it a really nice sort of start off.
Kate, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to leave you with a very difficult question, though, and it's not one that's been satisfactorily answered by any gardener that I've ever met. I planted a wildflower meadow in my garden, and it prospered for about 5 or 6 years. But unfortunately, then, I'm going to show you something you're not going to want to see now. This got into it. Mare's tail. And one of my wildflower patches has been completely swamped with this. Early in the year, I've tried sort of strimming it out, but I mean, this stuff is the most tenacious plant that I've ever come across. It's worse than ground alder. My question to you, how do I get rid of this mare's tail?
I think the thing is, Chris, is that we need to just find a newfound respect for mare's tail. It's been here since the dinosaurs. It's older than us, and it's amazing. I mean, the fact that no one can get rid of it just shows what an amazing plant it is. Yeah, I've in all seriousness, I've never dealt with mare's tail. Touch wood, I've never had a problem with it. So I don't know. I have no experience. But I think I would like to think that I could learn to love it and treat it as the amazing wildflower it is.
I like your answer. I like your ecologically, ethically correct answer. The thing is that whilst you might learn to love it, nothing else does, because it's got so much silica in it. It's really tough and crunchy, and therefore it's not palatable.
No.
Nothing comes to eat it. And my patches have been absolutely, it grows so densely that nothing much that, more than corncockle now can struggle through it.
Sorry,
anyway.
Apparently it's really good for washing your pans. Like, it's good as a natural scouring pad.
I'll get them in for Meg to do the washing up this evening.
Yeah, I did it all yesterday. Honestly, you're just coming up.
Kate, thanks ever so much.
Thank you so much.
Lovely to see you. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
So Kate has been talking to us about creating wildlife and bug hotels, making our gardens more friendly. I came across this amazing time-lapse that was sent in to us from Nicola Everett of her son making a bee mug hotel. Have a look at this. Isn't it great? I mean, I like seeing it in speedy motion, putting in that bamboo into that mug, making sure that all those bamboos are really solid by packing in that hay as well, so they're not going to wobble around. So the red mason bee or whichever solitary bees come in there are going to be nice and stable. So yeah, keep us updated with that mug. We hope to see
Hannah Stitful
some action with that.
Showed us how to do this a couple of weeks ago, and there's quite a lot of people sending in pictures saying that they've made them, and they were already occupied. So it definitely works.
It does. It really does work. So keep sending those in to us. Keep getting busy and making your gardens or your windows or whatever you have, whatever outdoor space you have, busy for wildlife. So another quick update. So we've been checking in with Jackie Smith and her barn owl box every so often. I'm pleased to say there is an update. Have a look at this clip. So what you can see there, last time I said there were 3 eggs. Now I can confirm that there are 4 inside her little barn owl box there. There is an estimate that we think the first one will be due to hatch on the 1st of May. Oh no, the 4th of May. It's your birthday. It's on Chris's birthday. So the first barn owl might hatch on the 4th of May. So we'll keep an eye on that and keep you updated. The interesting thing about barn owls, I said last time that on average a pair will lay 4.7 eggs. So
this one's got to lay, it's laid 4, so it's now got to lay 0.7 of an egg.
It's got to lay 0.7 of an egg. That's quite a tricky task for it, isn't it?
It is,
and but what you'll see with barn owls, which is quite unusual for all birds, is that they will start incubating the singular egg, second egg, third egg as soon as they are laid. Normally birds will wait till their entire clutch is finished before they start incubating, and the reason for this is so that they all hatch at the same time. This is different for barn owls, isn't it? Because they incubate straight away after one egg is laid, and therefore they all hatch at different times, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. And then of course you end up with the first one can be the largest one, and the last one to hatch can be the smallest one, and it's a sort of fail-safe system, the Cain and Abel strategy, as we call it with biblical reference. So that the idea is that, if there's enough food, the ones that hatch first get it, the one that hatches last sometimes doesn't get it, and it's something again we've watched on Spring Watch over the years on a number of occasions. Sticking with wildlife gardening and more gardening skills, which I think sometimes people forget these days. When I watch gardening programs, people are buying a lot of stuff, they're putting a lot of stuff down, they're not actually managing the plants. Well, this guy is Lee Gardner, and you can follow him on YouTube. He's got a very popular YouTube channel, Project Diaries. He's not a trained gardener. He's entirely self-taught. One of his relatives became too aged to manage their garden, so he took it over and had to teach himself. And here he is talking about taking cuttings of herbs, and this is something that you can do if you have a window box or even just a window sill. Here's Lee and his Project Diaries.
Hi and welcome to Project Diaries. Today I'm going to teach you how to take cuttings from herbs. Now this year I'm going to be growing lots of tomatoes, so the best companion plant for those is basil. Now it's only an annual, so it's only going to last for 1 year, but I've also got some mint here, and that's a perennial. That will come back every year. So I'm just going to teach you how to make some cuttings now. As you can see, this mint plant's gone slightly leggy due to the fact it hasn't had enough sunlight over the past month or so, but it'll be fine to take cuttings from today. This young basil plant is ideal for taking cuttings at the moment. Here's an example of an older plant that's coming to the end of its season and the stems are going really woody. You don't really want to take cuttings from here. To ensure a successful cutting every time, use the younger, greener stems. So get yourself a clean pair of scissors and find yourself a stem with 3 to 4 really nice leaves at the top. Now the average size for a cutting is around 4 inches, but you can use anything between 2 and 6 inches if you prefer. Now this same technique for taking cuttings will work for almost every single herb plant. Once you have your cutting, you just need to clip off the lower leaves and just clean off the stem. Then just take the cutting and place it in a cup of water, making sure the stem is at least covered by halfway. Now just place the cup on a warm windowsill and make sure it gets at least 6 hours sunlight a day. 2 weeks in, you should start seeing a really nice root system developing. Around the 3-week mark, you should be able to see something similar to this. Now all you need to do is just take them out of the water and separate them gently. They should come apart really easy, so try not to force them or break any of the roots. Perfect. Now get yourself a pot and make sure there's some drainage holes, and using multi-purpose compost, push a few holes into it and make sure all the root system goes in gently. Then just press the soil in gently around the cutting to make sure it's stable. Now there's no real spacing requirements when it comes to growing herbs, as you can grow so many in a small place, so you can put 3 to 4 cuttings in one pot. Then just water it in gently. These may need watering between 3 to 5 days, but keep an eye on the soil and make sure it doesn't dry out. There you go, all finished. Now just make sure this gets up to 6 hours sunlight a day. These cuttings work so well. It's one of the easiest things you can do in a garden, and you get such great rewards from it. These smell absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to use them in tonight's dinner. So hopefully this has given you the confidence and good ideas on how to take cuttings from herbs. So good luck trying your own, and I'll see you again next time.
What a guide.
Amazing.
Lee is just fantastic because he comes over as very, very knowledgeable, very, very capable, very, very practical, all of those essential skills. But he's also a very down-to-earth bloke. It's obvious he's learned this stuff about, and he's got it himself, and he's got enormous passion for it. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And it's proper gardening. It's old school, taking cuttings. It's not about buying stuff. It's about actually cultivating and propagating your own. Top work.
Which a lot of people have now been doing, haven't they?
Not that I can,
growing your own food.
not that I can do any of that stuff, but I love aspirationally watching it. A bit like I like aspirationally watching MasterChef. Should we wrap up the quiz? So here was the quiz. Phil Barnett's quiz today was this: a stripe of beige with a semicircle, and then beneath it a stripe of off-white. Megs, did anyone get this right?
Yes, we had quite a few people get this right, actually. So on Facebook, we have Lindsay, Emma, Anise, Lizzie, Emma, Pauline, Twitter, Humane Wildlife, Michelle, Gail, Paula, Susie, Mary, YouTube, Paula, Oliver, Alicia, Alison, and Beth. So well done, everyone that got that one right.
They might find
that quite simple.
It was, of course, a barn owl. The semicircle representing the face, the pale beige, its back, it's got beautiful golden tan colour, and then the underside of the off-white. So tomorrow we'll finish off with the most difficult one that Phil sent us. There is one other thing that we wanted to say today. Circulating on social media, there's been the idea that as a means of supporting the NHS, which obviously we all want to do at this point in time, a mass lighting of sky lanterns has been proposed for this evening. I think Megs and I would just like to say,
please don't.
Please don't.
Please don't. Sky lanterns pose a massive environmental hazard. We're in summer, so a lot of areas are dry. Releasing these fires into our atmosphere has an unpredictable nature. So please, please, please find ways of supporting the NHS, but please do not release sky lanterns.
Yeah, clapping has been great. And there are plenty of other things we can do, and we see people raising huge sums of money, but what we don't want is fires being set in our tinder dry countryside, putting even more stress on the emergency services and potentially damaging wildlife.
Maybe the money you spend on sky lanterns, NHS.
Coming up tomorrow, we've got Stephen Moss. He's going to be talking to us a little bit about nature writing, a man who certainly knows about it. He's a prodigious author, puts out lots of books, all very good, entertaining and informative. He's also very, very knowledgeable and a great birder too. So we're looking forward to speaking to Stephen tomorrow. And we're going to finish off with some slow-mo poodles. Of course, why not?
What else?
We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.